Okay. He told me he doesn't need his job, which, by the way, earns amazing money. He told me he doesn't need his job. So that made me believe he was going to do something serious. Well, he messed up to me or whatever it means. He told me it was my choice. All right. Like I said, it's just a whole rabbit hole. It keeps getting worse and worse and worse. He told me it was my choice to die as a Roman standing or kneeling, that it was my choice. And that's a quote. Okay? We already established Fusco is a slightly smaller than average man. He went ahead and he got the job done for whatever reason. I don't know why. Miss Shults was unpleased. She went ahead and got pleased by Fusco, all right? Shults is making a big deal out of it. Ultimately, Shults is to blame, and that goes across the board. Your wife's running around on you. I'm sorry about that, but you don't really even think about that, all right? So he's describing Fusco as a stallion who crossed the line. And then, in the same conversation, he tells Fusco that he needs to either die as a Roman standing, a Roman, or kneeling. And it's like, dude, what do you mean kneeling? What does that even mean? Because when you think about it, what does it mean to kneel and stand? I mean, what it means to kneel is to be oppressed, basically. Someone's over you. They're like a master to you. They're like a god to you. You're kneeling to them. Am I right? So in what world would Fusco ever kneel to Schultz after he went in and handled his business all up and down Schultz's wife? Well, how would he be kneeling to Schultz? None of this makes any sense, right? These are the words of a madman, is what I'm trying to explain. All right, so you can see his picture, and you know what I'm talking about. And it goes on further and further. It's going to be kind of a long article. After making these threats, which Fusco captured on a cell phone recorder, Schultz allegedly became physical. Fusco, who refused to discuss the case publicly, wrote in court records that Schultz threw a beer in my face. I'm going to have to get a drink. But, quote, threw a beer in my face. Do you think he's making that up? Or do you think there was plenty of witnesses to attest to Schultz clearly throwing a beer in Fusco's face right there in the middle of an Italian restaurant? Okay, so he threw a beer in my face and, quote, asked me if I was going to do anything about it. All right, so can you imagine this situation where Schultz is throwing a beer in Fusco's face and then asking him if he's going to do anything about it? Imagine if you're Fusco. See, the thing is, Fusco does like the right thing, except for handling business all over Schultz's wife. Except for that part, Fusco does the appropriate thing every single time, you'll note. And you will note that. So Schultz asked if he was going to do anything about it, to which Fusco did nothing about it. That was the best thing Fusco could have ever done, all right? They're in the middle of an Italian restaurant. He's talking to a deputy of the law. That person is breaking the law. It is against the law to throw beers in people's faces in public, in front of everybody. And then asked him if he's going to do anything about it. No, he's not. And he didn't. And, you know, like I said, Fusco just seems more and more reasonable as the article continues. So Fusco said he wasn't going to do anything, and then Schultz responded. He said, I didn't think so. It's like nobody thought so. Who in the world would do anything in Fusco's situation besides just sit there and clean the beer up off of his face in public? So then Schultz walks out the door. Okay, so Fusco didn't press charges against Schultz for what could easily, oh so easily, be construed as simple battery. But he called the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office the next day to document the harrowing encounter. A deputy wrote in his report, Richard just wants, quote, nothing more to do with Kevin or his wife and to be left alone, all right? which, you guys, that just sounds very reasonable to me. The wife and Shults probably should try to work things out, but without the help of Richard Fusco. He's already done enough. And he just wants to be left alone now. Seems pretty reasonable. But that wouldn't happen either, as it turns out. Instead, the dispute grew uglier, if you can even believe it. You better believe it. Culminating in a dangerous blow-up that involved a rock, an alleged death threat. If you didn't see that coming. But it wasn't only Schultz's menacing behavior that was alarming to Fusco. It was what Schultz does for a living, as we all know already. Right, the article is trying to keep it a secret. But basically, okay, Schultz, he's a sworn officer of the law. Meanwhile, breaking all sort of laws all over the place. And he's not just any cop. Schultz is a major, like we had stated, at the Broward's Sheriff's Office, a top aide to Sheriff Scotty Israel, and in charge of all training at the massive agency. All training? Yeah, all training. Schultz, who didn't respond to a request for comment by New Times, was tasked with readying BSO deputies to deal with mass shootings before Valentine's Day 2018. There's your guy right there. Who's in charge? Kevin Schultz was in charge of mass shooting training. When a deeply disturbed teenager with rage in his heart supposedly had an AR-15 in his hands and massacred 17 people. 14 of them students, allegedly. At Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High, Schultz's training program came under intense scrutiny after numerous BSO deputies failed to rush the school, instead hanging back behind patrol cars and trees like some damn cartoon characters. Right? Now, locals, and indeed many people across the nation, which is true, I can attest to that, they waited to see if newly elected Governor Ron DeSantis would fulfill a campaign promise by removing Israel from office for BSO's abysmal performance in Parkland, as well as the sheriff's failure to take responsibility in his own contradictory and at times completely, utterly false statements in the aftermath of the tragedy. A decision on his removal is widely expected to come in days, if not hours, and this is after the fact. Of course, everybody got canned. If you ever spoke Israel's name in a positive light, you got canned. He certainly got canned, and that is what happened. A lot of people got canned. They're still getting canned. But just go ahead and further this article. Broward Sheriff's Department Jeff Belt, the BSO union chief, you might remember, and a DeSantis transition team member, strongly believes Israel is unfit for office. All right, that was bad. He was saying that for a long time. And he says that the new governor should consider that Schultz's case in deciding the sheriff's fate, right, because it's pretty outrageous. Bell says Israel grossly mishandled the situation. He said he should have immediately removed Schultz from his training post upon learning the alleged abuse and referred the case to the state's attorney's office for prosecution. That's what he should have done. He didn't do nothing like that. Right. So there's an implication of crimes committed here. Quote, a regular deputy would have been put on restrictive duty immediately, pending investigation. Instead, the record shows that Schultz's high-ranking colleagues failed to conduct a complete investigation and essentially covered up the case. Right, which has never before been made public until, I guess, right now. or at least when this article was written. Though there's no telling that the tragic outcome of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High would have been any different if Shults had been disciplined or demoted for his alleged acts, Bell says. The Shults cover-up is a sign of a fundamental rot, quote, at the core of BSO, where special treatment for Israel's imported, hand-picked command staff was led to abysmal morale. A vote of no confidence in the sheriff last April, and deep-rooted problems that scream out for Israel to be removed from his post for good. All right, and indeed that is what happened.
So when Scott Israel was elected sheriff in 2012, one of his first things he did was hire friends from his former employer, the Fort Lauderdale Police Department. He stacked his command staff with so many FLPD members that some Broward Sheriff's veterans viewed it as a veritable soft coup by the smaller department. All right, we've already talked a little bit about some people's feelings in regards to that election.